He kicked his pregnant wife out in labor to marry his mistress, unaware she had just inherited an $80 billion fortune and secretly bought the hospital where his sick parents lay. She begged him for a ride as contractions tore through her body, but he turned away, calling her a burden he couldn't afford. The city lights blurred behind her tears that night, yet the same woman he discarded would soon sign ownership papers that made her the silent power over every quarter his parents depended on. She was heartbroken, but also heir to an empire he never knew existed. How could a man so desperate for wealth throw away the woman who already owned the world? And when he discovers the truth, what will he do when he realizes the hospital that saved his parents bears her name? Evening spilled gold across their Boston penthouse, glinting off marble floors and the half-folded crib waiting by the window. Elena Rowan rubbed her belly, whispering a lullaby half-remembered from her childhood, the baby kicking softly beneath her palm. She believed the conversation tonight would heal what months of distance had broken. The door opened. Caleb Rowan, still in his charcoal suit, walked in without looking at her. His phone buzzed. She caught a glimpse of a message flashing Lydia dinner tonight before he slid it into his pocket. "Elena," he said, voice low and tired, "we need to stop pretending." She smiled faintly, mistaking fatigue for frustration. "Pretending what?" "That this marriage isn't suffocating me, that we can live on faith while my parents die in a hospital I can't afford." His tone sharpened. "You've become comfortable with struggle. I'm done being poor." Her hand froze midair. "Poor? Caleb, we're just going through a hard season." "Hard season?" He laughed bitterly. "You pray, I negotiate. You wait for miracles, I chase investors, and still we sink." She wanted to tell him about the letter on the mantel, the one marked confidential, estate of Arthur Lennox. But Whitmore, the family attorney, had begged her to stay silent until the inheritance transfer completed. "If word leaks before probate closes," he'd warned, "you'll be hunted for that fortune before you even hold it." So she swallowed the truth. Caleb paced, veins pulsing in his neck. "Lydia understands ambition. She believes I can rebuild my firm. You," he gestured toward the nursery, "you believe in lullabies." Elena steadied her voice. "Lydia?" He hesitated just long enough for guilt to flicker across his eyes. "She's been there for me. You haven't." Silence settled, thick, suffocating. Outside, the city thrummed with ambition. Inside, their love suffocated under pride. He reached the door, hand on the knob. "You already left me, Elena. You just never moved out." The door slammed. Elena stood motionless, the echo ringing through the apartment. A contraction seized her abdomen. She gripped the table, breathing through pain and disbelief. When it eased, her eyes drifted back to the unopened letter. Somewhere inside it lay the truth of who she was, the daughter of a man she never met, heir to the Lennox Group, a legacy worth more than nations. Tears welled but didn't fall. She whispered to her unborn child, "We'll be fine." Beyond the window, the lights of Crestline Medical Center blinked faintly against the dusk. The same hospital where Caleb's parents were admitted, the same one she had quietly purchased in secret only days before. The man who just left her for his mistress had no idea. He had already walked out on the richest woman in Boston. The night after Caleb stormed out, the penthouse was silent except for the distant hum of city traffic. Elena sat on the couch, the unopened envelope from Whitmore and Associates still resting where it had been for weeks. Its golden seal had felt too heavy, too final. Now, with her heart fractured and the baby stirring within her, she finally broke it open. Inside lay a letter written in her father's trembling hand. A man she had been told died penniless when she was 6. "My dearest Elena," it began, "if you are reading this, it means my sins have found their peace. You were hidden for your safety. The Lennox name built empires, but also enemies. Now the group, its hospitals, biotech divisions, aerospace holdings, all are yours." The words blurred behind tears. Her father, Arthur Lennox, had been one of the country's most enigmatic billionaires, a man who vanished after a scandal involving offshore accounts and medical patents. The world believed he fled in shame. In truth, he had gone into hiding after refusing to sell his company's new cancer treatment patent to a conglomerate that wanted to bury it for profit. His attorney, Mr. Whitmore, had searched years to locate her. When he finally did, Elena was living as a modest schoolteacher, married to a man who thought her family tree ended in poverty. Whitmore's voice echoed in her memory. "Until the transfer is complete, Miss Rowan, your name must stay off public records. If this inheritance leaks early, the vultures will circle. You'll lose everything, or worse." So she had lived quietly. She used small trusts to cover Caleb's parents' medical bills anonymously and made her first official act as heir the purchase of Crestline Medical Center, the hospital where they were admitted. To her, it wasn't about power. It was about compassion, healing the place where her father's legacy once began. Crestline had been one of the first hospitals the Lennox Foundation funded decades ago before corruption forced her father out. Buying it back felt like reclaiming justice. Elena closed the letter and pressed it to her chest. Her father's handwriting smelled faintly of cedar, the scent she used to associate with warmth and safety. Her phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. "Don't wait up. Lydia and I are working late." Her throat tightened. She typed back okay, but didn't send it. Instead, she whispered to the quiet room, "You'll see one day, Caleb. I never wanted your money. I wanted your faith." Outside, thunder rolled faintly, though the sky was clear. Not a storm, but the echo of construction near the harbor where the Lennox Group tower was being renovated under her name. In a few months, her signature would appear on every Crestline contract, every investor report, every payroll slip. Yet tonight she felt smaller than ever, a woman alone, clutching a fortune too large to tell the man she loved. As she folded the letter back into its envelope, a single thought burned through the ache. He had abandoned her for ambition, never knowing she already held the world he was chasing. And somewhere across town, his mistress raised a glass of wine, toasting to the empire she believed she'd soon share. Unaware the true empress was already rising in silence. The restaurant glittered with the kind of luxury that always made Caleb feel seen. Crystal chandeliers floated above polished mahogany tables, and laughter from Boston's elite filled the air. He sat across from Lydia Hallstrom, her red dress tracing every curve like a secret weapon. She was everything Elena wasn't. Confident, loud, unashamed of her hunger for power. "Investors like people who take risks," Lydia said, swirling her wine. "But every time they meet you, you sound tamed." Caleb frowned. "Tamed?" She leaned forward, her perfume sharp and expensive. "Buy that wife of yours. Sweet woman, sure. But she's a cage, Caleb. You think small when you're around her. She keeps you grounded when you should be flying." He hesitated, thinking of Elena folding baby clothes while humming softly to the child that would soon arrive. "She believes in stability," he said quietly. "Stability?" Lydia laughed, low and musical. "That's another word for fear. You're not afraid, are you?" He wanted to deny it, but she reached across the table and touched his hand. It was electric, the validation he hadn't realized he craved. Lydia's company, Hallstrom Biotech, was on the verge of a massive deal, an acquisition by an unknown parent firm. She hinted that she could get Caleb into the room with people who mattered. "You've got potential," she whispered. "But potential means nothing without courage." He heard himself ask, "And what do I have to do?" She smiled. "Start living for yourself." That night, as Lydia slept in the soft glow of her penthouse, she sent a quick email to an unknown contact at Lennox Group, confirming the upcoming buyout. "Our board is ready," she wrote, "but who exactly is this new owner pulling the strings?" No one replied. The silence that followed would later haunt her, because the name she sought was Elena Rowan Lennox. Across town, Elena sat alone in her apartment. She'd left the penthouse after Caleb's outburst, choosing quiet over conflict. Her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed hospital management reports Mr. Whitmore had sent. Under the newly acquired Crestline Medical Division, she noticed a familiar name buried in a partnership list, Hallstrom Biotech. She blinked, unsure if it was coincidence or irony. "Lydia Hallstrom," she whispered, reading the name twice. A subtle storm began to rise inside her. She didn't know the full truth yet, but something told her Lydia's presence in their lives was no accident. She called Whitmore. "Mr. Whitmore, about one of our subsidiary partners, Hallstrom Biotech, who handles their contracts?" I'll look into it immediately, he said, sensing her unease. When the call ended, Elena stood at the window, watching city lights ripple against the Charles River. Caleb's betrayal had cut deep, but Lydia's name now pulsed like a quiet warning in her mind. The baby kicked again, harder this time. She placed her hand on her belly, whispering, "We'll survive this storm." And somewhere downtown, Lydia poured herself another glass of wine beside Caleb and said softly, "One day this city will belong to us." If only she knew, it already belonged to the woman she had just mocked. Rain hadn't been forecast, yet droplets began streaking across the penthouse windows as if the sky itself mourned. Elena sat on the edge of their bed, suitcase half-packed, hospital bag ready. She was 38 weeks along, contractions light but rhythmic now. She'd texted Caleb twice. "I think it's starting." No reply. By midnight, pain began to ripple deeper. She grabbed her phone again. Still no answer. Her breathing grew uneven, her knuckles white against the sheets. She whispered to the unborn child, "Hold on, sweetheart. Daddy will be here soon." Across the city, Caleb sat in Lydia's loft, the skyline gleaming behind them. The table was cluttered with champagne glasses and takeout boxes. Lydia leaned against him, her voice low, honey-laced. "She'll be fine. She always is," she murmured, sliding her hand across his chest. "You can't save everyone, Caleb. Not your parents, not her, but you can save yourself." He hesitated, guilt flickering like static, but it faded under the warmth of Lydia's skin. He told himself Elena would call a cab, that hospitals had people for that. He told himself this was his new beginning. When his phone buzzed again, Lydia's hand covered it. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Tonight, you choose you." Elena's breath came in ragged bursts now. Her face glistened with sweat as she shuffled toward the door. Every contraction felt like a wave crashing against bone. She called Caleb one last time. This time he answered, voice tight. "What is it now, Elena?" Her voice cracked. "Caleb, please, my water just broke. I need you." There was a pause, long enough for her to hope. Then, "Take the bus, Elena. I'm done pretending this marriage still exists." The call cut off. The phone slipped from her fingers. She stared at it, disbelieving, before another contraction bent her double. For a moment, she almost screamed his name. Instead, she grabbed the suitcase handle and whispered through clenched teeth, "We're going to be okay." She managed to hail a taxi outside the building. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, helped her inside. "Which hospital, ma'am?" "Crestline. Please, hurry." As the car sped through slick streets, she pressed a trembling hand to her belly. The pain was unbearable now. Yet through it, she saw flashes. Her father's letter, Whitmore's warnings, the plaque she'd soon unveil bearing her new name. At a red light, she caught her reflection in the window. Pale, drenched, but fierce. For the first time, she realized she was done waiting for rescue. Across town, Caleb lifted his glass in a toast. Lydia laughed, unaware that the phone on the counter was still lit with Elena's last text. "Please tell the nurse I'm coming alone." Outside, thunder cracked across the city. Inside the speeding taxi, Elena gripped the seat as the skyline blurred past. Each flash of lightning illuminated the faint outline of Crestline Medical Center ahead, the same hospital her husband couldn't afford, and the one she secretly owned. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Almost there, ma'am. You'll be fine." She nodded weakly, whispering, "Yes, we will." The storm raged harder. Somewhere beyond that storm, a man raised a glass to his mistress, believing he'd finally escaped the weight of his past. Never knowing the woman he'd left in the rain was about to become the one thing he could never outrun. His destiny. By the time the taxi screeched to a halt outside Crestline Medical Center, Elena could barely breathe through the contractions. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking her hair as she stumbled toward the glass doors, one hand gripping her suitcase, the other clutching her belly. "Help, please," she gasped, and within seconds, two nurses rushed to her side. "Ma'am, it's okay. You're safe now," one said, guiding her into a wheelchair. "You're going to be fine. Just breathe." They didn't know that the trembling woman before them, clothes clinging to her body, face pale with exhaustion, was their new employer. Her name hadn't yet appeared on the official Crestline ownership bulletin. To them, she was just another patient in pain. In room 407, the soft hum of medical machines filled the air. The nurse checked her vitals while another adjusted the IV. Elena clenched her jaw through another contraction, eyes darting to the framed plaque on the wall. Crestline Medical Center, a Lennox Group institution. She almost laughed through the tears. Her father's legacy was everywhere, from the sterile blue walls to the heartbeat monitors designed by one of his old subsidiaries. "Is your husband on his way?" the nurse asked gently. Elena hesitated, then whispered, "No, it's just me." The nurse nodded with quiet understanding and squeezed her hand. "Then we'll be your family tonight." Hours blurred into minutes. Pain came and went like tides, breaking through her with relentless rhythm. Each time she remembered Caleb's voice, "Take the bus, Elena," and pushed harder, not out of anger, but out of defiance. When the baby's cry finally filled the room, she wept, not from pain but from relief. A nurse wrapped the tiny boy in a white blanket and placed him in her arms. He was small, perfect, alive, proof that some miracles come from the very moments that nearly destroy us. She whispered, "Welcome home, little one." The nurse smiled. "Have you chosen a name?" "Elijah," she said softly. "It means the Lord is my strength." Outside the room, a passing orderly paused to read the hospital's daily memo pinned on the board. A line printed in bold. "Effective next quarter, Crestline Medical Center officially transitions under the sole ownership of Lennox Group Holdings." He didn't notice that the woman whose name would soon appear on that document was the one giving birth just a few doors away. As dawn crept through the blinds, Elena cradled Elijah and stared at the rising sun over the Boston skyline. The same skyline her husband once called his empire to be. "Someday," she whispered to the newborn, "you'll know that your first breath came in a place your father thought we couldn't afford." Her eyes glistened, not with bitterness, but with a quiet vow. She wouldn't chase revenge. She'd build something greater. A nurse entered with a gentle smile. "You have a visitor." Elena's heart raced. For a moment she thought maybe Caleb had come after all, but it wasn't him. It was Mr. Whitmore, holding an envelope and a solemn smile. He whispered, "It's time, Mrs. Rowan Lennox. The inheritance transfer is complete." Her eyes widened as the weight of his words sank in. She looked down at her baby, then back at him. "Then let's begin." 3 weeks later, the morning sun glinted off the glass facade of Crestline Medical Center. Caleb walked through the revolving doors, his jaw set and eyes heavy with sleeplessness. His parents' conditions had worsened, and the hospital had begun sending new bills. Numbers so high they made his head spin. He strode to the billing desk, shoulders squared. "I need to speak with someone about my parents' accounts. Caleb Rowan, room 213 and 215. The receptionist, a polite woman with tired eyes, typed for a moment, then blinked at the screen. "Mr. Rowan, it says here that both accounts have been fully covered." Caleb frowned. "Covered? By who?" She smiled faintly and handed him a folded note. "This came through the administrative office yesterday. It's signed." He opened it. Inside, a simple message in elegant handwriting. "All expenses settled in full. No family should suffer while healing. Mrs. Elena Rowan Lennox." The pen slipped from his hand. "Rowan Lennox," he whispered, reading it twice. The receptionist glanced at him. "Yes, sir. She's the new majority owner of Crestline. Everything here is technically under her name." Caleb's throat went dry. "Elena?" he muttered under his breath, as if saying her name might summon her ghost. Without another word, he turned and walked down the hall, shoes echoing sharply. On the wall near the executive offices, a gleaming gold plaque caught his eye. Crestline Medical Center, a Lennox Group institution. CEO, Mrs. Elena Rowan Lennox. He stared at the letters, frozen. The woman he had called a burden was now listed beside one of the most powerful business empires in the nation. The same hospital he'd once raged about paying for was hers, bought in silence even as he screamed about poverty. He stumbled backward, gripping the wall for balance. The hallway seemed to spin. He remembered every cruel word he'd thrown at her, every moment of pride disguised as logic. A nurse passed by, offering him a sympathetic smile. "You look pale, sir." Are you all right? He forced a nod, trying to steady his breath. When, when did she take over? The nurse thought for a moment. It was finalized around the time she gave birth here, I think. Sweet woman, stayed quiet, never demanded special treatment. You'd never know she was the new boss. Caleb's mind fractured at the words gave birth here. He staggered to a nearby bench, heart pounding. His parents were alive because of her. His bills were gone because of her. And she'd delivered their son in the very hospital he'd once called a waste of money. He covered his face with his hands. Lydia's voice echoed in his mind. She's holding you back. But the truth hit him like a tidal wave. Elena hadn't been his anchor. She'd been his foundation. He left the hospital in a daze, the sound of automatic doors hissing behind him like a closing chapter. As he stepped into the sunlight, his phone buzzed. Lydia. He didn't answer. For the first time, he felt something colder than regret. Fear. Because if Elena had truly become what that plaque said she was, then every world he'd tried to build with Lydia now stood under her shadow, and she hadn't even spoken yet. 2 days after the discovery, Caleb sat at his kitchen table staring at the letter Mr. Whitmore's courier had left at his door. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Elegant, deliberate, Elena's. Caleb, you once told me love was measured by what we build together. You built walls. I built bridges. You wanted freedom from the weight of me. I wanted peace from the noise of pride. I've paid your parents' bills not to shame you, but because love, real love, doesn't stop when vows are broken. I don't need revenge. I already have everything I once prayed we could share. Take care of them. That's my final gift. Elena Rowan Lennox. The paper shook in his hands. He remembered her voice during their wedding. The vow about building, even when the ground shakes. He had laughed then. Now the memory felt like a curse. He looked around the apartment, sterile, half-furnished, Lydia's perfume lingering in the air. The woman who'd promised him power had been distant since the hospital visit. When she finally walked in that afternoon, her phone was buzzing with calls. Caleb, she said sharply, tossing her handbag on the counter, what did you tell the press? He blinked. What press? About Crestline's new ownership. Reporters are saying the Lennox Group bought Hallstrom Biotech's parent firm, my company. Our investors are in panic. He stared. Wait, Lennox Group? That's Elena. Her lips parted in disbelief. What are you talking about? He handed her the letter. As she read it, the blood drained from her face. You mean to tell me your wife is the new CEO of Lennox Holdings? My ex-wife, he muttered. Lydia's laugh cracked like glass. You absolute fool. Do you realize she owns my boardroom now? Every contract, every patent, hers. She grabbed her keys, furious. This is over. You're toxic. Do you know what kind of storm this creates? They'll freeze my assets, Caleb. He reached for her arm. Lydia, please. She yanked free. You ruined me. The door slammed, echoing like judgment. Silence followed. He sank to the floor, letter still in hand. Through the open window came the sound of distant traffic and a siren. Boston alive and indifferent. His phone buzzed again. A notification from his bank. Account overdrawn. Another from his investment fund. Partnership dissolved. He laughed once, hollow and sharp. Everything he'd traded his marriage for was gone within days. He picked up the letter again, tracing her signature with a shaking finger. Rowan Lennox. 2 names, one love he had shattered, one empire he could never touch. He whispered to the empty room, Elena, I didn't know. But she did, and that was why she hadn't needed to shout or expose him. Outside, the city lights blinked like judgmental stars, each one whispering the same truth. He'd kicked out a queen and crowned his own ruin. The ballroom of the Boston Financial Forum shimmered with polished glass and camera lights. Journalists packed the aisles, their lenses flashing against a stage framed by massive LED screens. The banner overhead read, Lennox Group Holdings, Rebuilding Tomorrow's Healthcare. Caleb stood at the back of the room, blending into the crowd. He hadn't meant to come, but curiosity had dragged him here. He told himself it was about business, not emotion, but his stomach twisted when he saw Lydia Hallstrom 2 rows ahead, seated with a stiff smile that failed to hide her panic. Rumors had spread like wildfire over the last week. Lennox Group, the same global conglomerate that had acquired her biotech company, was hosting its first public event under its mysterious new CEO. No one yet knew her name. Then the lights dimmed. From the wings of the stage, Elena Rowan Lennox stepped into view. The crowd murmured. Caleb froze. For a moment, the noise vanished. The clicking of cameras, the rustle of papers, even his own heartbeat. She wore a sleek black suit, her hair pinned neatly, her expression serene but unyielding. The woman he'd left for being too ordinary now radiated power that filled the room. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady, melodic, carrying the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. For decades, healthcare has served profit more than people. The Lennox legacy began with compassion. Tonight, we restore that legacy. She paused, letting the silence draw the audience closer. "My first initiative as CEO," she continued, "is a $20 billion fund to expand patient access, especially for families struggling with medical debt. I know what it feels like to watch someone you love suffer in a hospital bed. No one should ever have to choose between healing and survival." Her gaze flicked briefly toward the crowd, just long enough for her eyes to meet Caleb's. The contact lasted less than a heartbeat, but in it he saw everything: pain, memory, forgiveness, and something colder: resolution. Lydia shifted in her seat, whispering into her phone, but every word from Elena's lips drowned her out. "Many of you know me as the quiet daughter of Arthur Lennox," Elena continued, "but I stand here not because of inheritance, but because I refuse to let pain turn me cruel. This company, these hospitals, will no longer measure value in wealth, but in healing." Applause erupted. The cameras flashed wildly. Caleb's eyes burned as realization sank deeper. While he'd been chasing status through Lydia's boardrooms, Elena had built something divine from heartbreak. After the speech, as reporters swarmed the stage, Lydia stormed out, muttering into her phone, "She owns me now. She owns everything." Caleb lingered at the edge of the ballroom, unable to move. Every cheer for Elena felt like a mirror, reflecting what he'd thrown away. When she finally descended the stage, her security guards clearing a path, he caught a final glimpse of her, smiling politely, shaking hands, calm as marble. She passed within 10 feet of him, and though she didn't look his way again, he heard her words echo from the stage replay on the big screen. "Sometimes the people who abandon you in pain teach you what compassion truly costs." And for the first time in his life, Caleb understood what loss really meant. The underground parking garage beneath the Boston Grand Hotel was dim, humming with the low echo of engines and footsteps. Elena's black Rolls-Royce Phantom E8 waited under soft fluorescent light. Her security detail loaded briefcases into the trunk while she exchanged quiet words with Mr. Whitmore. "Tomorrow we meet with the board in New York," Whitmore said. "After tonight's announcement, the markets will soar." "You did it, Elena." She smiled faintly. "It's not about markets anymore." Whitmore studied her. He was there, wasn't he? She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," Whitmore sighed. "What will you do?" "Nothing," she said simply. "Some lessons don't need to be taught twice." As Whitmore stepped away, a familiar voice echoed from behind a concrete pillar. "Elena." She froze, her pulse tightening. She turned slowly, and there he was. Caleb. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, the confidence that once filled every word now stripped bare. "Elena," he said again, stepping closer. "I didn't come to fight. I just needed to see you." She folded her arms, steady but calm. "You've seen me." He swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but please just listen." She said nothing. "I thought I wanted success," he began, voice shaking. "I thought Lydia and the investors could make me whole. But everything I built turned to ash. You were the only thing that was ever real." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "And yet you chose the fire." "I was stupid," he whispered, "blinded by pride. I can't undo it, but please, can we talk? Just once? For Elijah's sake." The mention of her son's name softened her eyes for a moment, but her tone stayed firm. "Elijah will know who his father is, but not the man you were. He flinched. Please, Elena. I'm begging you. She took a slow step forward. Do you know what labor feels like, Caleb? The hours of pain when every second stretches forever? I went through it alone. You were drinking champagne with your mistress while I screamed through contractions in a taxi. The driver held my hand because you wouldn't answer your phone. Tears welled in his eyes. I know, I've replayed it every night since. She studied him, her voice low but sharp. You destroyed the life we had and I rebuilt it from the ruins. I could ruin you in return. I could buy the building you sleep in and evict you by morning. But what would that make me? You! He dropped to his knees, sobbing. I don't want your money. I just want forgiveness. For the first time she smiled. Soft, genuine, heartbreaking. Then you already have it. But forgiveness isn't an invitation. She stepped past him toward the Rolls-Royce. Take care of your parents. Their medical coverage remains under Lennox Group. That's my last promise to you. The car door closed, engine purring like quiet thunder. As the Rolls-Royce glided into the dark exit, Caleb stood frozen, tears streaking his face. Her taillights disappeared into the night, 2 red embers fading from his world. He whispered to the empty garage, You were never my downfall. You were my miracle. And his echo was swallowed by silence. 6 months later, Boston was bathed in the early summer light. The city moved on, as cities always do. But for Caleb Rowan, time had slowed to a penance. He lived now in a small apartment overlooking the Charles River. No luxury, no meetings, no mirrors of ego. His investment firm had collapsed after Lydia's company fell under federal investigation. She had fled to Europe, leaving behind frozen accounts and scandals. Reporters called it the Hallstrom implosion. Each morning he walked to Crestline Medical Center to visit his parents. The same automatic doors that once intimidated him now slid open with gentle acceptance. Nurses smiled and greeted him by name. Elena's orders. Their room was bright, filled with flowers and sunlight. The bills never came. He always stopped at the lobby before leaving. There, hung beneath a glass skylight, was a new portrait. Elena Rowan Lennox, painted in soft pastels, eyes calm and unwavering. Below it, engraved in gold, for those who gave when they had nothing, and forgave when they had everything. He read it every day, as if it were scripture. Sometimes he saw her from a distance, arriving in a motorcade, her security moving like shadows. She never looked his way, but once, as she stepped from her car, she paused and smiled at an elderly patient in a wheelchair. That smile pierced him harder than anger ever could. He had wanted to own the world. She had learned to heal it. Elena's life had changed quietly too. She moved into her father's old estate outside Cambridge, its halls filled with sunlight and soft laughter. Elijah was 6 months old now, chubby-cheeked and always grinning. At night she would walk him through the library, pointing to photographs of Arthur Lennox and the hospitals he'd built. Your grandfather believed money as a tool, not a throne, she'd whisper. And your father, he taught me that pain can plant gardens. When Elijah fell asleep, she often stood by the balcony and looked toward the city lights across the river. She didn't hate Caleb anymore. She didn't miss him either. She simply understood him, a man too afraid to see the value of what he already had. One afternoon, Caleb left a small package at Crestline's front desk. No name, no note, just a tiny silver bracelet engraved with Elijah. Security delivered it to her office. She turned it over in her hand, smiling sadly. Mr. Whitmore, she said quietly, have it sent to the Foundation's children's wing. Let it belong to someone who needs hope. He nodded. She set the bracelet down and returned to her papers. Expansion plans for new hospitals in Detroit, Dallas, and Lagos. Her father's dream had become her mission, a global network of healing. That evening, as Caleb stood by the riverbank watching the sunset reflect off the Lennox Tower, he finally understood what the world had been trying to teach him. He had chased power and lost it. She had embraced pain and turned it into purpose. The wind carried church bells from downtown. He closed his eyes and murmured, I hope she knows I'm grateful. Across the river, in a nursery filled with soft lullabies, Elena held her child and looked out the same window. She smiled gently as if she'd heard him. Because for some stories, forgiveness is the final fortune.